Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, the Pope's thoughts on homosexuality as he made some comments in a private meeting with a recent victim of some of the Chilean Catholic clerical sexual abuse. EU and Iran relations are kind of at a straining point right now. And also the looming Mideast peace process, of course, is once again back in the news as leaders from all sides are trying to get to a solution to bring this into existence. Well, a survivor of sexual abuse at the hands of Catholic clerics in Chile, Juan Carlos Cruz, recently, on invitation, spent 3 days with the Pope, recounted a private conversation that he had where when he told the Pope that he was gay, the Pope's response was, well, God made you like this. God loves you like this. Some say that these comments might signal a shift in the Catholic Church's teachings on homosexuality. The Vatican says that they don't comment on the Pope's private conversations, but they also did not enter a denial.
Well, the main point of the discussion is that if the Pope would have said that God created you like this, that would be going beyond what any Pope has ever said before and doesn't go in line with the traditional Catholic Church teaching that homosexuality and the inclination to homosexuality is disorder. So these statements open up a whole host of other questions on the Catholic Church's thoughts on gays.
Well, the Democratic Republic of Congo is battling a growing Ebola outbreak. First reported 12 days ago in the northwestern town of Bikoro, has since spread 150 kilometers to the capital, Mbandaka, home to over 1 million people, which also connects to other towns, and it sits on the Congo River, which is a link to 4 other countries. Now, the experimental vaccine has been administered coming from Sweden there to over 7,000 people, to the people of the DRC. Tariq Jasarevic, who of the World Health Organization, said that this is a targeted vaccine, but it doesn't replace the other preventative and containment measures that are already in place.
The last Ebola outbreak 4 years ago killed 11,000 people in 4 countries. Now, currently, there's a major publicity campaign until the vaccines arrive to encourage people to wash their hands and beware of contaminated meats that may contain the virus.
Well, protesters in Libya have come to the headquarters of the UN mission in Libya to send a message requesting the military to lift the siege on the eastern city of Derna. A member of the Libyan State Council said that the UN mission in Libya has let them, speaking about the Libyans, down. The city of Derna has remained under siege for nearly 2 years, and rebel forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar have been holding that city in that condition. Now, protesters are worried that if the UN doesn't do anything to protect civilians there, many of them may suffer from fighting and the lack of basic needs.
The city of nearly 150,000 has been suffering under the siege. Now, banks are short of money, hospitals are short of medical staff and equipment, and patients cannot leave the city to be treated elsewhere. Awid Bil Qasim, a member of Derna's local council, said, "We are short of food and many supplies. We have power and water cut. They have their power and water cut. Drinking water is limited, and people live in fear because of random shelling. Derna is facing a war crime," he said.
Yeah, that's horrible. Well, the protesters claim that since the passing of a Security Council resolution that Western powers used to intervene in Libya in 2011 called for the protection of civilians, the UN, they said, needs to do more to help them.
And as we mentioned earlier, the EU and the U.S. are having a little bit of conflict regarding the Iranian sanctions. Our field correspondent Larry McGee has been covering the story. Larry, what is this conflict between Europe and the U.S. all about?
As the conflict between Europe and the U.S. heats up, the conversation is beginning to start concerning what can be expected. One of the primary questions being posed is whether or not the EU can actually counteract the sanctions that the U.S. imposes on businesses that continue to buy and sell with nations that the U.S. considers unacceptable. The response of analysts is that it really depends on the situation. With nations such as France and Germany, who conduct a lot of business with Iran, those nations are more vulnerable. For companies without many, if any, ties to America and its financial institutions, the opportunity for America to pressure those companies are less. To offer more insight on the implications of the American pullout from the Iran treaty, we have a segment here now from the commentators.
Günther Verheugen, former vice president of the European Commission. After Trump took America out of the Iran deal, which means that European companies in Iran may be subject to American sanctions, the EU fired back, activating a law that would block European companies from complying with U.S. decisions on Iran. In your opinion, who is going to out-sanction who here, the United States or Europe?
I'm afraid that the Americans have the bigger stick here. I'm afraid that the Americans have the bigger stick here. If you were in a European company or a German car maker, for instance, and you would look at the figures, what kind of business are you doing in Iran? What kind of business are you doing in the United States? You have not much choice. You have not much choice. And you will decide not to invest in Iran. You will continue to invest and to make business in US. And if the European Union would really promise to compensate for all the losses, I can promise you that goes far, far beyond the financial capacities of the European Union. So I'm really afraid that the American policy of unilateral action, the American policy of taking hostage other nations and companies can be successful at the end. The American policy of taking hostage other nations and companies can be successful at the end.
So the European statute that has been activated prohibits EU companies from cancelling their business with Iran due to American sanctions. So let's say if I'm a European company in Iran, I have to suffer the consequences brought onto me by the Americans, and if I quit Iran, then EU will go after me. Doesn't this put EU companies between the devil and the deep blue sea? How is that making their life easier?
No, I don't think that the problem is the role of the companies which are already active in Iran. The problem is that the promise that went with the Iran deal was that we would do more and help Iran to develop the economy and to increase the living standard of the people. So that would mean much, much more investment than we have done in the past. And what I have said is, and I would like to repeat that, you cannot expect new major investment in Iran coming from major European companies, in particular those who are world market leaders, who are leading in technology and innovation. I'm really afraid that the American action was well calculated. I'm really afraid that the American action was well calculated, and that we have no real defense against it, and that we have no real defense against it. And with the deal in jeopardy is the whole system of nuclear non-proliferation, not in the area of the Middle East, but everywhere. And it might change the whole security pattern of the world in which we live. It's a really serious, very, very serious situation. And in this situation, it would be extremely important to organize cooperation between the other partners of the deal, which I have already mentioned. The only thing I would like to say right now is we in Europe, we should not make the mistake to believe that the presidency of Donald Trump is just a short-living mistake. I'm afraid that Trump is representing America much more than Obama represented America, and we should be aware that this policy will probably continue. The America First policy, have to create a trade war with the United States. The United States is the strongest economic partner for the European Union, and vice versa. Yeah, we are very much depending on each other. There will be no winner in a trade war, and my view is it should be avoided as much as we can, because we cannot accept that the Americans dictate the terms of the business.
So Germany was previously slammed by the United States for failing to pay its share of 2% of its GDP to the NATO budget. Trump now says member countries must pay 4% of their GDP to NATO. Is Germany planning to meet this target? If almost nobody in Europe is even meeting the 2% target, how is Washington going to make everyone pay for it? Trump also says that those underpaying to the NATO budget will be dealt with, whatever that means. That's almost...
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that's almost at the same time as he's threatening sanctions on Europe over Iran. I mean, why does Europe and Germany in particular allow United States to blackmail them here and there? Because that's what it looks like from the outside.
Yes, I agree. And in the past, the European attitude vis-à-vis the American policy was always a mixture of megalomania and strict obedience. So we never found the right middle here. So we need to discuss now what we want to have, and need to tell our American friends that until now the EU-US axis was a guarantor for peace and stability, not only in Europe but in other regions as well. If that axis disappears, we will have more tensions. We will have more conflict. The world will come closer to perhaps the final conflict, and nobody, even Mr. Trump, I believe, nobody can really want that. So
And of course, it is the idea of the anger and hostility that currently exist among the nations moving towards a final conflict that has many people gravely concerned. But despite this, the U.S. is unveiling what it is calling a new strategy for Iran. The plan was introduced by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who in his first address as secretary described Iran as a major cause of instability in the Middle East. The intent of the new strategy is reportedly aimed at weakening Iran's economy, with the alleged thought that that will in turn prevent the Persian power from financing its nuclear program and supporting regional fighters. Secretary Pompeo says Iran will be forced to make a choice, either fight to keep its economy off life support at home or keep squandering its precious wealth on wars abroad. The administration says they will not have the resources to do both. The secretary says the U.S. also intends to go after the boats that Tehran has situated in the Persian Gulf and to track down Hezbollah and Iranian operatives and crush them. The administration also intends to continue its pattern of supporting sedition and dissent within the nation to increase pressure on the government and possibly produce an overthrow. The U.S. says it is willing to change its tone towards Iran if they are willing to bow to 12 demands, including permanently abandoning their nuclear and missile programs. If Iran is willing to cave to U.S. pressure, then America is willing to change its stance and bring Iran into the fold. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, the way tensions are building in that region, it definitely looks like they're on the path to war eventually.
And as the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said, that they're forcing Iran to make a decision. So that doesn't seem like it's going to take too long to get to their breaking point and, see which way they're going to go.
That's right. They've never brought peace through war, ever. Well, the Middle East peace process has been the object of many U.S. presidents' attention. They have attempted to leave a lasting peace agreement as their legacy, and President Donald Trump is no different. However, who he is using to meet his goals is different.
At a celebration dinner the night before Trump was sworn into office, he reportedly told his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, if you can't produce peace in the Middle East, nobody can. Well, some believe Kushner is the least qualified for the job of peacemaker. However, the experts up to this point have failed. So they're actually thinking that his inexperience might mean that he is able to achieve peace.
He's not locked on a particular ideology that prevents peace negotiations and so
forth. Or a
forth.
particular side,
right.
So he can be very objective.
Interesting. Well, analyst with the Mortons Group, Jeffrey Aronson, explained to Al Jazeera News that the system for drawing up peace accords and all that surrounding it was, quote, wrong, misguided, and needs to be rethought. He went on to say of the new administration, we're charting a new course. We don't really have a great idea what that course is. All we know is that it's not that.
Well, whether intentionally or unintentionally, the peace process, which has gone on for decades, has only made the occupation of Palestinian territories easier. But according to White House leaks, the mission of the Trump administration is not necessarily to build lasting peace between Arabs and Israelis, but really Arab-Israeli unity against Iran. And the Palestinian people are viewed more as a roadblock in the way of obtaining that unity.
Interesting. Well, they're calling it the deal of the century, but it hasn't officially been announced yet. The following details have been released as follows. The Palestinians would initially control Gaza and less than half of the West Bank. The Palestinian capital would not be Jerusalem, but be made up of villages surrounding Jerusalem.
The deal would also allow Israel to retain security control over the Jordan Valley and total control over Palestinian movement between the West Bank and Gaza. And lastly, a corridor would be created between Palestinian territory and Jerusalem's holy sites.
Well, the initial reaction to the deal by the Palestinians has been, not surprisingly, one of disgust. Mahmoud Abbas has been quoted as saying, "This is not the deal of the century, it's the slap of the century."
The Palestinian president has reportedly not even taken a look at the document which outlines the new deal. Abbas is holding on to the old formula of land for peace based on international law. He wants a state with the original 1967 borders and finally Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital.
But while all this is taking place, President Abbas is also experiencing some serious health problems. The 83-year-old Palestinian leader was rushed to the hospital over the weekend with a high fever, dizziness, and severe chest pains. This is the third time in 1 week that he has been sent to the hospital.
Well, back in February, Mr. Abbas was also rushed to a Baltimore area hospital while on a visit to Washington, D.C. His advisors claimed it was for a routine medical checkup. Now, government sources are saying this is the most seriously ill President Abbas has ever been. It's the first time he has had to stay overnight at a hospital, and never before has he made 3 visits in 1 week.
Interesting. His aides are saying he may leave tomorrow, but reports have also come in that Abbas is weak and having difficulty walking and breathing on his own. It's clear he's still very sick.
Mahmoud Abbas has been the Palestinian president since 2005. In light of Abbas being so sick, there is talk of who might succeed him in the event he passes. But even if he is just hospitalized for a long time, concerns over a coup to shift power is real.
Well, the president himself has not appointed a deputy for the Palestinian Authority, but there are a number of officials who may succeed him. Among them, Majid Faraj, currently the General Intelligence Services Chief. He has the support of Israel and the United States.
Another is Mohammed Dalan. He was expelled from the Fatah movement by President Abbas because he was thought to be a threat to his leadership. Dahlan could be someone coming from the outside who has support for or from the moderate Arab states like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. And there are others, but the two that have the potential to bring consensus and stability are Mohammed Dahlan and Fatah member Nasser al-Kidwa. And what's interesting, Katan, is you know, Mahmoud Abbas, he has been pushing the two-state solution, but it seems as now as they talk about successors, should Abbas pass, you know, because he is so ill, it seems as his successors, or those in line that they're thinking, are generally supportive of the United States, which would mean that they would probably not lean towards that two-state solution. So we know that Yeshua Hawkins has been teaching that the two-state solution is what prophecy shows, Bible prophecy shows, is going to take place. So very interesting to see how these events are going to turn out, with now President Abbas being sick, possibly someone else coming in there, and how that two-state solution is going to play out.
Yeah, well, definitely the Trump administration is pushing really hard and really fast, and I'm not really sure, as some of the analysts say, you know, if they're really kind of thinking through all of their moves. We had the U.S. Embassy recently move to Jerusalem, which just a few months previously the United States declared as the capital of Israel. So we're seeing a lot of moves take place really fast. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, part of Trump's legacy is to actually bring about peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But oddly enough, it's not to stabilize the region in general, it's so that they can be in unity against Iran. That's so right. Always kind of someone's the loser in all of this.
A lot of moves and a lot of events yet to come to see how they unfold.
That's right.
Well, if you'd like to learn more about these stories and others, please contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
You can write the House of Yahweh by writing them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can also call them at 1-800-613-9494, or visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh by typing in info@yahweh.com. For all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget the best resource to study your Holy Scriptures, the Yisrael Says and the Ask Yisrael programs. You can find those free programs online by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, stay tuned. Up next is another enlightening message from Yeshua Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.